My name is Gloria Tibbett. I'm the district manager for the BLM Keller Country District based in Cedar City, Utah.
Great, thank you so much. So I want to start by just getting an overview of what the BLM found in this additional environmental impact study as it pertains to the Northern Corridor Highway project.
Yeah, so we were asked to take another closer look at some of the factors associated with the proposed route through the Red Cliffs National Conservation Area. UDOT had submitted their application for a highway that has been commonly known as the Northern Corridor. Through the supplemental process, we looked at a few different resources that warranted an additional look just based on new information and some other things that might not have been as thoroughly looked at in the original environmental study.
Can you just summarize for me kind of the initial findings of, or I guess the findings of this supplemental study?
Yeah, so some of the resources that it focused on were the impacts to the Mojave Desert tortoise and its habitat, particularly related to wildfire in the area. And typically after we have wildfires burn through an area, we see a proliferation of weeds, noxious weeds and invasive species coming in that typically outcompete native vegetation when they regrow in areas that have been burned. And so just taking a harder look at what impact that has on the vegetation community and the Mojave Desert tortoise, since that is a threatened species listed under the Endangered Species Act.
So just from my understanding, having a highway go through this desert area, there's an increased risk of wildfire due to the increased traffic in cars. Is that kind of where the wildfire risk comes in?
Yeah, typically where we see an increase in human activity, there's a higher potential for wildfire in the area. In areas that have very low visitation, a lot of the wildfires that we see in those areas have more natural starts like lightning. But in high concentration areas where we have a lot of visitor use, those are more prone to sparks from tow chains or cigarettes being thrown out from vehicle windows or things like that. In addition to people just on the landscape having campfires that might escape or other factors.
Thank you for that clarification. So with this alternative route via the Red Hills Parkway Expressway, tell me a little bit about the decision to endorse that alternate route.
So the BLM's approach was really to try to balance the purpose and need that was expressed by UDOT, which is to address east-west congestion in the Washington County area. To balance that with the other competing interests of protection of natural resources, the endangered or I guess threatened species, the Mojave Desert tortoise, and many of the other resources that we manage. What the EIS concluded was that the Red Hills Parkway Expressway would be the preferred alternative just based on the balance of those factors. The traffic analysis that was provided to us by local entities showed that it would be effective in addressing the east-west congestion, and it also had quite a few less acres that would be impacted for Mojave Desert tortoise habitat. And so that seemed like the alternative that balanced all of those factors the most.
Thank you for that. There's been a lot of public input on this topic. How does that influence your decision-making process, and how much are you communicating with local groups and local politicians and local leaders when it comes to an issue like this in Washington County?
Public input is incredibly important to any kind of evaluation process like this. We had significant public interest through the scoping period at the beginning of the process last winter, and then also through the public comment period we had this spring. We had quite a few cooperating agencies, our local government partners. We had tribal entities who have been involved throughout the entire process. And certainly we've been listening to input from all of the different entities across that spectrum to arrive at a conclusion.
So speaking of that, I know this actually came out after I sent these questions over, but the Utah delegation yesterday from Celeste Malloy to Mitt Romney to Governor Cox had expressed their disapproval of your decision and kind of stating that with the next administration, they want to work to reverse this. What is kind of your message back to people who seem to oppose this decision, and how does your research support your decision making?
So we haven't issued a decision yet. The final EIS publication just occurred last Friday, and we're in a 30-day period where we cannot issue a decision within 30 days of issuance of that final supplemental EIS. And so we'll be taking additional input and listening to all of the stakeholders and parties involved prior to issuance of a decision sometime around mid-December at the earliest.
So between when the findings of the environmental impact study came out, the recommendation to endorse the new, the alternative route, and then the actual formal decision, there's still time for public input and other people to contribute to this conversation. Is that a correct understanding of that?
Yeah, well, we don't solicit for public comment. It's not a formal public comment period. We never stop listening to people until the decision is signed.
Great, thank you so much for that. If the new route does move forward, are there any additional steps that the BLM will take to conserve other or to protect other areas that are of concern, like this conversation with Zone 6 and the Greater Meuse Valley that could potentially be at risk should the route change and the Northern Corridor project doesn't go through?
We don't manage the land that is outside of federal jurisdiction, and it's up to the Utah Trust Lands Administration and other entities to determine exactly what kind of development occurs on that space.
Thank you for that. And then do you have anything additional that you would like the public to know about that supplemental environmental impact study and your choice to endorse a new route?
I think the only thing I would like to add is that the BLM and the Fish and Wildlife Service, our effort was to conduct a very thorough analysis that looked at all aspects of this project to ensure that we had all the information at hand when a decision is issued later this year.
What would be your response to other politicians and other groups saying that this was a rushed study? What are your thoughts on that?
All I can say is that the BLM and the Fish and Wildlife Service's effort is that we conducted a very thorough process so that the final supplemental EIS reflects all of the input that we've received from all entities, whether that's public or governmental or non-governmental, and that it accurately reflects reflects the conditions on the ground and the consequences and impacts anticipated from each of the alternatives we analyzed.